we can't say with any certainty that non-human animals grieve.
Some people like to think that we are the template against which all other animals should be compared. But we don't really have exclusivity on emotions. We have joy, other animals have joy. We have deep grief, other animals have deep grief. Our joy may be different from the joy of a dog, or our grief may be different from the grief of a deeply grieving goat who lost their horse friend, or an elephant who lost their elephant friend. But from the fact that it's different, it doesn't mean it's less deep. It's just different.
At the Monkeyland Primate Sanctuary in South Africa, surplus zoo animals and abandoned pets are offered a new beginning. Keepers help them gain their natural identities in a large protected habitat.
Our main concern with primates is that they are still bought as a pet. And we've seen it with experience that monkeys don't make good pets. The background to most of our individual monkeys aren't really well known to us, because the people who bring their monkeys to us are not really keen to actually explain the scenario prior to them being dropped off here.
Atlas the gibbon was born in a South African zoo. He was only 2 when his father became very aggressive with him, and the zoo was forced to take Atlas away from his family. After 13 years at Monkeyland, he is still struggling to fit in. Atlas spent his first few months here in a pre-release cage with 2 other gibbons. The keepers hoped he would bond with monkeys that, although darker in color, were of his own kind. Instead, Atlas spent more time focusing his attention on the monkeys outside the enclosure.
All the monkeys that actually live in Monkeyland are curious of newcomers. So any new individual that is actually released into the pre-release cage will be visited by typically nearly every single monkey in the forest, just to see who they are.
One group of monkeys really caught the eye of young Atlas.
Normally we don't see much interaction between species, but capuchin monkeys, we noticed that especially the juveniles were engaging on the fencing or on the roof of the cage, and were engaging in playful activities with Atlas.
When it came time to be released from the cage, the 2 other gibbons bounded off into the forest, leaving Atlas behind. That's when Atlas made an unexpected decision. He joined the capuchins, making them his surrogate family. In the wild, male gibbons are subservient to females, and even their own offspring. But family bonds are tight and enduring. The bonds Atlas has formed with the capuchins, however, are general and fleeting. He engages the playful curiosity of the juveniles until they grow and move up in the troop. Then he connects with the next generation.
This is the late feed. We cover all the platforms in the morning, and then in the afternoon we cover about half of it, just to make sure before they go to bed they have something extra to eat.
Atlas waits with the juveniles for his turn to eat. The capuchins tolerate Atlas. He's a misfit. But even as a marginal member of the troop, he gains some feeling of companionship.
Claude, the alpha male, is actually approaching, and then Claude chasing Atlas away now. Atlas is a lot bigger than Claude. He's a lot faster as well. And Claude is aware of these abilities of Atlas. However, Claude has got a whole group behind him. So what he's doing is just showing Atlas constantly that he's in charge. This is his group.
The confines of the sanctuary bring together monkeys that would rarely come into contact in the wild. And they all have to figure out how to get along. Larger and more aggressive, vervets are the capuchin's main rivals for food. The young capuchins value Atlas as a protective ally. He guards them as they feed, driving off the competition.
What Atlas is doing is actually very, very intelligent. You just sort of act like you're a post or a tree. And that allows the capuchins to sort of wander around Atlas. And he also obviously gets a bit of comfort because they're moving in closer towards him. And this is what Atlas wants. It's actually amazing to think that being alone has driven him to such an extent where he's actually willing to give up his natural lifestyle to have a bit of interaction with a different species. So all he wants is just company.
Despite his efforts, Atlas seems destined to lead a solitary life. Most gibbons do nowadays because their species is endangered.
Animals don't always find the right partner at the right time, especially nowadays with deforestation being a big issue in the wild. So they may be spending months, even years, alone without the backcall of a female that would actually partner up with them.
Many animals have a very strong social drive. It's almost an instinct to be with other animals. And you'll find variation within species, but really most individuals of social species have this innate drive to have friends and to be part of a group. Some of the cross-species relationships are really among odd couples, if you will.
Sometimes animal attraction is a mystery. This 45-year-old female Aldabra tortoise was chosen by an unlikely suitor, a male Brant goose. The goose follows the tortoise everywhere, and wary be the one who gets too close to her. Brant geese mate for life, and in the tortoise, our goose has found a rock-steady partner. But what does the tortoise get out of it? Well, she gets a protector, a companion, and a coveted space at the all-you-can-eat salad bar. The tortoise is entirely capable of rebuffing his attentions, but she accepts them. They've been together for over 4 years, and their keepers have never seen anything like it.
When it comes to forming these complicated relationships with others, I think we have to admit that we're not the only ones that do that, and that other animals have friends too, and potentially evolved that trait for the same reason that we did. This incredibly complicated, time-consuming, sometimes painful thing that we do, getting a relationship with another individual, is necessary for our survival.
Good scientists are really tapping into stories and then doing more systematic research. It's going to be slow because scientists were very slow to accept that dogs had emotions. So they're going to be more reluctant to think about hippos and tortoises or, say, cheetahs and dogs. I think with this heightened interest in unlikely friendships, you're going to see a lot more reports of it from credible field biologists.
The relationships we've seen between animals drawn together across the species divide show elements of what we call friendship. Communication, trust, compassion, even altruism. But these partnerships are between domesticated animals or have been fostered in some way by humans. Would an animal in the wild feel compelled to build a friendship with another from a different species?
It was either the next day or the day after, I can't quite remember. We started hearing the calling. The baby screaming, and they sound like a baby. They sound like a child. And we could hear it, we didn't know what it was. So we went out to investigate, and we couldn't see anything, but we could hear it. And this went on for 3 days. It was wandering around crying and crying, and we realized that the mom had deserted it. Eventually, it got to the point where we thought, you know, it's really hot out. She's in the middle of the paddock crying her little eyes out. So we went out and brought her in the house, and that was that. Kate instantly took to the fawn. She acted as if this was what she'd always been waiting for. It was as if a new mom had stepped in, and the fawn instantly brightened up, and it just went up from there. Kate was amazing. She was so patient. I was a little worried because the fawn was so rough, suckling on her, and there's no milk, so she kept booting her. You know how they do that with their head. She never raised a lip. She never growled. She never did anything.
Good dog.
Kate just seemed to know that this little animal needed looking after. She used to take her around the edge of the lawn quite a bit and into the forest a little bit, but not too far. So I'm not sure if he was teaching her boundaries or not, but it looked like it. She would walk around sniffing as if she was grazing, and Pip would be right beside her grazing. But I don't know whether Kate knew that she was teaching her something, but she did. You know, I don't believe in making them into pets. We were just trying to save her life. You know, I didn't want to be picking her up and cuddling her or anything like that. She's a deer, and I wanted her to live a deer's life. After about 2 weeks, she wanted to be outside and sleeping in the woods, and that's the way it went. And it was mortifying, you know, thinking that she was sleeping out in the woods all on her own. But that's what deer do. They hide their babies for 12 hours and go off and do whatever. And the baby has a suckle, and then the mom's gone again. She'd sleep in the woods for hours, and then Kate would go and find her. She'd come in and have her meal, and they'd play for a few minutes, and then she'd go to sleep again, just like all babies, you know, play, eat, sleep.
As the months passed, Pip grew by leaps and bounds, and she began to stay away for days at a time. Kate kept a constant vigil for her friend.